Hey everybody, this is Eddie Babbage, founder, CEO of Timeline Genius, your host here of the Wedding Industry Insider Podcast. I've got another great episode lined up for you. Very excited to introduce Jamie Wolfer here. She is a wedding planner. She's the founder of Wolfer & Co., which is a wedding industry collective based in Central Texas. Jamie also started and built up a highly successful YouTube channel called Jamie Wolfer, which is an online wedding planner. So Jamie, thank you so much for taking time to do this. I'm so excited to have you on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, this is going to be fun. You and I always love when people come on where I already have a relationship, already
Yeah.
know and admire the person, and I get to kind of show you off to the audience that we have. And just to kind of give people a heads up, like you're definitely going to want to stick around for this interview. Trust me, Jamie is very unique and she's doing some very exciting things in the industry.
Mm,
And from the vantage point of any wedding planner listening to us right now,
yeah.
you may pick up some ideas that could really help advance your business. And, these ideas are so good that I even had to ask Jamie in the pre interview if she would be willing to just openly share about her success journey. And of course, having the abundance mindset that you do, Jamie, you
Yeah.
said, absolutely. If we can share, help, empower other planners to, reach their own success. So anyway, before we get into all of that, can you please just give us a little overview here, Jamie? Tell our audience, for those that don't know you, how you got to be where you currently are in our industry.
Yeah. Well, I have such a unique start story where I planned my wedding and then wanted to be a wedding planner afterwards. No one else has that story.
Never heard that before.
No, super unique. But I also had a long-standing desire to start a YouTube channel. And full disclosure, I was like, I just want to start one, and I don't have anything to speak to except for why is no one really making wedding planning videos? Everything I'm seeing in the industry seems really focused towards high-end weddings, and I couldn't afford that. I think we got married for like $8,500. So what if I took my knowledge based on being broke and my experience as now starting this wedding planning business and just made videos off of them? And we kept going and it kept building, and it was wild and humbling and so great. And that's kind of how we got to this point. We realized that there's a huge need in the industry to speak to couples that don't have $50,000 budgets, $100,000 budgets. Most people don't have that amount of money. So how do we serve them and meet that need? And the audience showed up. They showed up in spades.
I love that, Jamie. And tell me too, and we're obviously going to get in, we're going to unpack that. I'm also going to dive into the concept of social reciprocity,
Yeah.
which you mentioned in the pre interview, which is very intriguing. I think that's like, I love on the podcast when we can get to concrete tips, things that people can say, oh, no, I'm going to take that thing.
Yeah.
If they're a doer, right? Like there's some people like, and I fall into this sometimes, you hear something all the time and you're like, it only works if you do it, but there's something concrete here that I think people can apply to their business. But um, let's unpack a little bit more your wedding planning experience and kind of your experience building your wedding planning company.
Yeah, it was I was in a really unique situation in Southern California because that's where we're from originally. We moved in the middle of 2020. Highly don't recommend moving
There you
halfway
go.
across the country in the middle of a global panini, as I like to call it. Um, so I was in a unique position where we were very well connected. So word of mouth was a hugely powerful way for us to get started. My dad was a pastor growing up, so I mean, if you're going to hire someone, hiring the pastor's daughter to plan your wedding seems like a really convenient option. And it really was a cool experiment. Now looking back to realize, I never ran ads. I did a couple of expos that were very powerful, but we got to doing, I think, gosh, while still having kids, 25 to 30 in like my second year, which feels like, in the grand scheme of things, a huge jump pretty early on, when you're still running a household and stuff, which I think more moms should give themselves a little bit of grace on that. It's hard to do 52 weddings a year and have children and do laundry. Um,
How many
so
do you have, Jamie? I'm not going to gloss over that because I have two kids, and you and I, like, I know
Yeah.
the impact. I think I told you, my wife is actually traveling right now, and I'm like, the impact. This is a little like funny, but the metaphor I see when somebody's like, I'm doing 25 plus weddings a year, and I've got kids. I'm like, okay, I just see somebody with
Yeah.
like big boulders in a backpack scaling Mount Everest, because it's not the same as climbing by yourself. Anyway, how many
No,
how many kids do you have?
I am currently 7 months pregnant with number 4.
Okay, so
So,
you've got an S on your chest. You're
uh,
super Jamie. I'm not gonna let this slide, Jamie, because I want to talk just for a second about this,
sure.
okay? And you alluded to this. It's something that people ask you about.
Yeah.
A lot of people get into wedding planning, I think, with the idea this will give me freedom of schedule. I want to be a mother. I want to be a wife. I want to be
Yes.
involved. And you can look up, as you and I think both know, and find yourself in a situation where, like, wait, I don't have that work life balance that I thought. My weekends are getting jacked. Even my weekdays. Like,
Yeah.
tell me, how did you do that, walk that tightrope, build this successful enterprise,
Mhm.
and also put in the work to have, the family life that you wanted?
Yeah, I had to be very strategic on when I worked and very effective like when my daughters we now homeschool our kids, but when my daughters were in school and my son was a toddler, he went down for a nap, I ran to my laptop to start doing emails.
Yep.
I was very
Yep.
strategic with the timing of that. And also was aware that, full disclosure, my husband was not pumped about me running this business in the beginning. He was like, "You're not making any
Yep.
money. It's not going anywhere,
Mm.
and it's just distracting from like family life. What's the point?" And he has since gone, "Okay, I see the point. Never mind, I take it back." But
Nice.
I wanted to do it all. So I would have moments where I'd write emails at night, but I wouldn't send them till the next day. So no one got an email at 11:30 p.m. And I would also sell it really effectively to my clients by saying, we tend to have all of our appointments and meetings, and we were doing Zoom before Zoom was Zoom.
Yep.
It's like knowing an indie band before they go mainstream,
Yeah, yeah. You want to
right?
tell everybody I was doing, yeah,
I
totally.
was
Yeah.
doing Zoom before people
Yeah,
did Zoom.
yeah, yeah,
But I
yeah,
sold it as
yeah.
like it's a great way for us to be productive without having the travel time and keeps the cost more effective for you. And we're also there to meet with you in your off hours because most of our clients have 9 to 5 jobs. What I wasn't literally leading with was, so does my husband. So at least I'm waiting till he gets home to watch the children so I could then do this. So it was very strategic about when I would get stuff done and trying to be practical about what my limitations were. So that's why, being pumped about 30 weddings in my second year, like that was hard. There's only
I
so
can
many
only
emails you can answer in
imagine.
that hour, and being very effective with my boundaries and my offerings. So here's what I will do, here's what I will not do, and being very effective in communicating that made for a really healthy working relationship with the clients I could take on.
I'm going to say something that might be taboo, and please feel free to disagree. I feel like there are a lot of people that I've heard kind of say something contrary to what I'm going to say. So my wife's an entrepreneur. Obviously, I am too.
Mhm.
And what I found is some people will say, "Oh, when you have kids, you just get more efficient," and the implication is kind of like you're still able to run just as fast, get just as much done. My wife and I, at multiple points along the way, particularly having our second kid, we're like, wait a minute, no, 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 that's not true, right? Like, I wasn't as efficient before, but if you add up the sum total, and I feel like the reason why I'm making the point, and obviously I want to hear your perspective,
Yeah,
is because I think if you have kids in the mix, like you said, giving yourself grace, you can look up and be in a situation where you're kind of beating yourself up and you have this, I almost think, harmful expectation that it's going to get back to the way it was. Whereas for my wife, for us, it was kind of like, no, we need to adjust to a new norm.
yeah,
I mean, what do you sort of think on that point?
yeah. I think um it drove me to be more productive in a lot of
For sure.
capacities.
Yeah.
Um, if I wanted to have my cake and eat it too, then someone had to bake it. So
Yeah.
it was all right, well, you're not the victim of these circumstances. Someone's
That's
got to
huge.
plan these weddings, right? Like, you signed up for this. You have children. Let's be practical about it. So I think I got more effective over time,
Yeah.
but I was an active participant in it. It's not like, oh,
Yeah.
you have kids, all of a sudden you grow an extra arm. it's funny because my my sister's now ex-husband would always say, "Well, you're just better at it than me. Well, you're just better at, the late nights than me." And it's
You're
like,
like,
"No,
that's a belief.
that's it's just because you
That's
have
a
to,
self-limiting belief. Yeah,
right?"
that's right.
So
That's right.
it's
Yeah,
not
that's
like all
right.
of a sudden I became more talented at any of these
Yeah,
things.
sure.
And
Yeah.
so many arguments or so many, moments where it just was not as convenient. So I think I agree with kind of both statements in different facets. But there is this idea of like, well, you just figure it out. You just get good at it. No, no, you are an active participant. You're probably going to fail a lot. You can get a couple bumps and bruises along the way. But if you really want it, you'll keep going.
Yeah. No, I think that's dead right. That definitely makes sense. You said something too that's really interesting, Jamie. I don't know about you. I mean, you probably do this stuff too because we were vibing about, Alex Hormozy and just kind of
Oh
I feel like we're
yeah.
very much on the same wavelength. But like I've gone through, a few sort of, periods where I'm just introspecting, right? Because I believe all of this stuff just boils down to mindset. Like we think the battle is out here in tasks and external events and all of this stuff, but I really feel like this is where it all happens inside our minds. And on that note, I go looking for like self-limiting beliefs. For me,
Mm,
one of the self-limiting beliefs that I actually uncovered is this narrative, a victim narrative. And I don't want to
mm.
overstate the point. Like, it's not that I just walk around all day tuned onto this frequency, but
Sure.
if I'm honest, I noticed that occasionally there was this line of thought that's like, oh, yeah, I would have done more. But obviously, I had to go to an impromptu doctor's visit that just ate up. And it's not the pernicious thing about self-limiting beliefs is they're not crazy, right? They're completely self-sabotaging, but
Yeah.
they're not crazy, right? Did you, when I hear you talk about I'm not the victim, because that's the winning mindset, like did you have to actively get your mind there, or did that just come very naturally to you?
Um, I same as you. I found myself in pockets of it
Yeah,
where I
yeah.
saw this reel the other day, and of course I have no reference of who said it, but there's something poignant in that was said in that short form content. And it was, did you have a bad day or did you milk 5 minutes of your bad day? And I went,
Mm,
oh, okay.
yep.
I felt that one where it's like, was it actually a bad day or did you let those 5 minutes just completely decimate you emotionally,
Yeah,
completely
yeah.
decimate your productivity? So in those moments, it's not like and I think I echo your sentiment, it's not like I've struggled with long-standing victimhood in any of
Right,
this.
right,
But
right,
how do we
right.
take, an even more microscopic look about where our heart is when we're making these decisions or having these feelings of like, okay, am I letting this 5 minutes ruin my day, or is it actually it's a rough day, Like, and give yourself grace when it is. But if I signed up for this, it's that mentality of, oh, my clients are so demanding. Did you put boundaries up? Did you say
Yeah,
no?
taking responsibility.
Yep. I will never forget. I had the opportunity of being mentored for a season under Amy from Wedding Chicks. She's now moved on to other ventures. And she brought a group of us vendors together. And there was this one wedding planner who kept talking about how people would just text her on the weekend or at
Mm,
midnight, and she just was like, I just can't believe, my clients just, they always need access to me. And I'm like, did you tell them to
mm-hmm,
stop?
mm-hmm.
It's those moments of, the small pockets of changing your heart, making a different decision, not being a victim of those circumstances that maybe you didn't set up, but maybe you did. What ownership can you take in that? And then what you get out of that is a healthier business that will last longer because you said no.
Wow. Jamie, that is so powerful. Like if people like you're making me, I love this aspect of the podcast that it helps me grow too, but
Mm,
and these are the fundamentals, right? Like they're not completely new. They're being articulated with like a different hue, color, and context, but like
sure.
you can't be a victim and be like victimhood and success are just at loggerheads with you. Like you've got
Mm.
to, but it's so we're all human, and I love that you owned it and you didn't say no. I never like ever dabbled my
Oh,
money. I'm like
yeah, no.
really like as a parent, if you're a human person, like when your day gets completely upended, or the myriad other things that just arise, there is a tendency, I think, just to kind of respond. But how powerful to just be reminded that, like, because I know everybody knows this, but like the minute you play the victim, you've given the power to the
Mm.
circumstances, and you've said, I'm not in control of like whether or not I'm successful here. Like it feels good in the moment, but it's so like detrimental in the long haul. So tell me, Jamie, you in the pre-interview, um, there's so much for us to dive into that I know is going to be great for people. I'm going to take another digression here because I think
Sure.
it's really important and it ties to our chat in the pre-interview when we weren't singing Lauren Hill together, which was a really fun. One of my best pre-interview moments was singing Lauren Hill with Jamie and but you mentioned boundaries
Yeah.
and taking response. Talk to me about particularly being a mom and
Yeah.
having the personal, obligations. It's like the role that boundaries played in your success. And for people, planners are nice, right? They want to
Yeah.
please. You know
Yeah.
this, like so that's why sometimes you should set a boundary, but you don't like how do you set boundaries and why are they so important?
Oh, okay. So your no is just as powerful as your yes. And it took me a while to realize that. And it took me a while to, I mean, our oldest are 13. We have 13-year-old twins. So I've been parenting for over a decade now, and I can say with full surety, like, my no is just as powerful in a parenting moment as my yes is. And I've seen that play out there. But it took me a while to move that over into, I should probably do this with my business because I got trampled because I said yes to too many things. And it was a slippery slope, and my client didn't know what the yes was and what the no was, and what was in the contract and what was not in the contract. And I got mad. And I was like, why are you assuming I would do these things? And then I sat with it and I went, because I didn't tell you I wouldn't. I didn't,
Yeah,
it's a super sweet client. Super sweet.
yeah,
Not at all one of those assuming, ask for too much. It just was, I
yeah,
wasn't clear. So, one thing that we started to do in the very beginning, my mom was my assistant for like every wedding because I had no money. And at the end of every event, I would say, okay, what went well? What didn't go well? What could we do better in the future? And most of the time, it was like, I am never hiring this DJ again, or catering kind of goofed on this. And very rarely was it, this is our fault. We did this incorrectly. But how? It's not my job as the wedding planner to do everything, but it's my responsibility to make sure it gets done pretty effectively.
yes,
Right?
yeah,
So,
yes.
where is my responsibility? Where's my ownership in this? And using that mentality when clients cross boundaries. When, did you tell them the boundary? Did you tell them no? And so often in our mastermind, when we're talking through some of these situations where I mentor wedding planners, and they'll be like, oh, my clients are texting me at midnight. Did you tell them to stop?
Mm-hmm.
Where is your ownership? Because you're right. And I love how you put it. Victimhood and success cannot coexist in the
Yeah,
same space.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's so important. And, do you feel like, I mean, it almost seems like there's like a two-step process, right? If you want to have boundaries, step one is like, this almost sounds like too simplistic to be worth mentioning, but I feel like it is.
Yeah.
Take a minute and think intentionally about what you want your boundaries to be because
Mhm.
your boundaries, you know, as a mom, wife, etc., may be different than another person's boundaries. So,
Absolutely.
and then to communicate those, but the rubber on the road, and I feel like I may be out of line here. You may see this differently, but I almost wonder if part of the reason why people aren't setting that boundaries, those boundaries, particularly as wedding planners, is what Oprah Winfrey calls the disease to please, which I've been known to have
Mm.
a case or two of myself. But for you, why weren't you initially communicating your boundaries? Like, what was the kind of roadblock keeping you from doing that?
Oh, well, the disease to please for sure.
Yeah.
What
Okay. All right.
if I didn't do this? Would they be happy with my services? If on
Right.
that toxic thing that all of us planners do in the beginning of, what if I had rentals? Well, what if I also
Yeah.
add invitation design or florals?
Yeah.
Or why aren't more
Yeah.
people doing this? It's so easy. I'm already
Yeah.
going to be there. I'm just going to toss this on. No, that just that's how I'll stand out. I will add more offerings. I won't
Yeah.
I won't hone in
Yeah.
what I've got. I'll just be a one-stop shop. And then you're
Hmm.
exhausted and you're bitter and you're frustrated. I did all those things. I did all those things. So I agree. I think speaking out loud, what are your we spend an entire module focusing on boundaries in the mastermind that we
Yeah.
have.
Yeah.
You got to speak them out loud. You got to come from a place of like, what can you own? how much of this is just because you want people to like you?
Yeah.
Or are you just not being an effective communicator on what you will and won't do? Because no one's going to like you less if you say no
Yeah.
really nicely. Like, hey,
Yeah.
actually, that's not a service that we include in our current package. But if you'd like to add that on, we can do this for this additional fee, or I'd be happy to find someone who can meet that need for you. Right?
Yeah.
Are they going to be mad at you for
Yeah.
doing that or like you less? No.
Yeah.
It's just you haven't learned the communication tools to maintain that boundary yet.
Yeah, you just made me think of my dad's best friend. Both my dad and he are now passed away, but he was kind of like an uncle to me. And he would just, just share little pearls of wisdom. I remember one time I was little and he pulled me aside. He's like, he used to call me Blubs. He's like, Blubs, you want to know one of the most important words in the English language? I was like, yeah, what is it? He's like, no. And I was like thinking on that and have subsequently
Right.
just come. I mean, you said it, right? Like, no is just as important as yes, but that's really powerful.
As a wedding planner, you know how important it is to create detailed wedding day timelines for your events. But creating your timelines can be a tedious and time-consuming job. Until now. Because Timeline Genius lets you create beautiful, detailed wedding day timelines with ease. And it keeps everything you need on the wedding day in one central place. Here's how it works. First, Timeline Genius saves all your clients, vendors, and venues in your Rolodex, so you don't lose time looking for their information. And when you're ready to create a new timeline, you simply enter the key information for your wedding. Click a button, and voila! Timeline Genius magically gives you a customized timeline for your event, where all the details are laid out and the times are calculated for you. From there, you can easily edit your timeline by adding or deleting items, inserting images, changing font styles, and customizing everything to your liking. You can also instantly shift the times for as many items as you want. And when it comes to your clients and vendors, Timeline Genius lets you give them the highest level of service. You can send them tailored timelines, showing only the items they're involved in. And you can collaborate by inviting them to a mobile-friendly, web-based version of the timeline. You can even set text message reminders to automatically go out on the wedding day. And once you've completed your perfect timeline, you can download it or email it out as a beautifully styled PDF. And that's Timeline Genius, a smart software that will help take your wedding planning to the next level. Start your free trial today.
Okay, Jamie. So another thing that we talked about in the pre-interview is what you call social reciprocity. And this is something that, as I kind of teased at the outset of the interview, I think this is a concrete thing.
Yeah.
I don't see a lot of other people doing it. Just kind of talk to me, first of all, about what social reciprocity is, and then we'll get into how people can take this and apply it to their businesses.
Yeah. So let me just say for the record, I didn't figure out what social reciprocity was until I was accidentally already doing it. So I don't profess to be at all this expert of like, look at me using really big sociological terms because I know what I'm talking about. No, I would put out these videos and then people would call me to book me and I'd be like, why? I literally gave you a map. I gave you the keys to the kingdom. Why are you booking me? Like, you didn't have to. This is fascinating. And so I ended up kind of diving into it a little bit further. And I'm going to quote Dan Ariely. He's a behavioral economist over at Duke. He says reciprocity is
Duke.
Duke.
Never mind. That's where I went.
Oh, okay. I was like,
My alma mater. So.
Well, I'm so glad I could engender those feelings in you to like bring those out. That's great. Which is great because I just clicked away to read the quote, so I have no context for video. All of a sudden, you're just yelling in the background, like, "Wait, what did you say?" Oh, that's great. He says that reciprocity is a very, very strong instinct. If somebody does something for you, you really feel a rather surprisingly strong obligation to do something back for them. Yes. He adds that the whole concept of this is like free samples. And why they're so effective, because if you've been to Costco, you know. And so what samples do is they give you a particular desire for something. If I gave you a tiny bit of chocolate, all of a sudden it would remind you about the exact taste of chocolate and would increase your craving. So what I was doing inherently with making these videos was like reminding people, oh, wait, wedding planning is hard, or it could be stressful, or I liked how you said that. I want to continue to do that. That makes sense to me, right? Or I want more of what you're talking about because I felt safer, I felt less stressed, or it was enough to inspire the conversation that they wanted to keep it going. So I didn't do this at all on purpose. We kind of fell into it. So the idea of social reciprocity is give away stuff for free and watch what happens. And watch what happens. We see this played out very effectively in sample selling. Because as far as where you could sell if you're a potato chip company, you could be on the aisle, you could be on the end cap, or you could be doing actual sampling. And the math behind those numbers is mind-blowing. I think it's, let me see if I can pull up the number real quick because I don't want to misquote it. If we consider like the aisle of where the potato chips are, like the baseline, right? Every potato chip is going to be on the chip aisle. End cap, it's a pay for feature. You'll see about 32% increase in sales. But the power of a single person, of one person offering samples, will see anywhere from a 600 to 2,000% increase in sales because someone's talking about it.
Yeah. You know, you're making me think there's a book that is just fantastic. It's called Influence, and it's by a guy named Robert Cialdini. And I think there are like 7 or so, like just pillars of influence that he talks about. And, you know, he gives a disclaimer at the front of the book. He's like, this is really powerful stuff. Please don't use this for bad, because these principles can be used for good or evil, right? Like even reciprocity. Like there are people that are like, hey, you want a free hit of crack? You know, like, like don't do that.
Don't do that. That's not a good business model.
But like the example that I found both humorous and compelling that he talks about, he's like, those people, you don't see them as much, but like you do sometimes in New York City, like they're walking around Times Square, like with like a monk robe, and they give you something, you know, like the Jehovah's Witness at the airport, is like, and when they give you that free trinket, the reason why they're doing it is because then you do feel a sense of like, we're human, unless you're just like a sociopath.
Right.
If somebody gives you something, we're all inclined to try to even that debt, you know,
Right.
But you're doing it here for a beautiful purpose, which is, and talk about this too, Jamie, because I think you mentioned this. Not only is this a good way to bring people in, but it also can be a filter, right?
Yes, because I mean, to return back to the chip analogy, I'm not going to go try a sweet flavored chip. I'm not into sweets, which is always such an ostracizing thing when I say that out loud. It's just not my favorite thing. I'm not into it. My
that'll
husband
get you
loves
beat
sweets.
up in wedding planner circles.
Dude,
talking about you don't like
get me started.
chocolate. Like, what's next? And you don't like cupcakes. You don't like oxygen either, Jamie. Like,
let me guess. Do you not like babies or puppies?
Yeah, that's right.
You just like
throw her in jail. Get the pitchforks now.
I know. But if someone had like a cinnamon sugar potato chip, I'd be like, I'm not really interested in trying that, right? Or if someone was offering, you know, dates, like the fruit, date, I'd be like, no.
Right.
But if someone is offering pickles, and I'm not just saying this because I'm pregnant, okay? I love pickles. I love pickles. And I'd be like, yeah, I'll go sample that. Or if someone was offering a barbecue flavored chip or a sea salt and vinegar, or my mouth is watering as I'm talking about this. I already know kind of inherently my taste buds, right? I know what I'm kind of going to gravitate towards and what I'm not going to. And you're not going to see a large crowd of people over at the date table if they don't like dates. So it's almost like by putting out this free sample, you find ideal clients because the people who don't want that aren't going to come to you, right?
They're going to shy away from it.
You'll still
I
get
love that. And no, go ahead.
Yeah, you'll still get the freebie seekers is what we call them, where they're like, thank you. You know, that's my husband in Costco, where he will go to every single stand to eat it just because it's free. But still the stuff that resonates with him and hits right, he's going to go back and buy. So you'll still get freebie seekers. You'll still get people who are like, yeah, I mean, I'll try the cinnamon sugar potato chip. I'm not going to like it, but I'll eat it because it's free food, you know?
Right. They just have that gene that just makes them take whatever's free.
Yep.
So to make this a little more concrete, Jamie, for people who because I do believe this is just a universal principle, right? Like this notion of reciprocity, like it's a human nature thing, right? how can people, like, what sort of things should a wedding planner, say, be thinking about giving away for free to kind
Okay.
of, and the way I see it, Jamie, it's like being top of mind, right? Because they're probably looking at multiple planners, and this could be that extra thing that just forms a little connection, builds the
Mhm.
reciprocity, and just keeps you top of mind. Like, what can people give away?
Yeah, great question. Because I'm sure everyone listening is like, yeah, but I'm not selling chips or pickles. Like,
Right, right.
how does
Or
this
maybe they
translate?
are.
Yeah, like we touched
Talk
on
about
a
standing
little bit
out.
ago. We do florals and pickles and invitations. You just, but you are selling something. You're
Yeah,
selling products. You're selling services. You're selling yourself. So how do you give people a sample of that, right? Like, what does that look like? And that's a fantastic question. So my guess is a majority of the audience is on social media, right? Like
hmm,
probably
yep,
somewhere in there. My guess is most of them are probably running their own social media accounts.
hmm,
They're also probably paying to advertise somewhere. What if
hmm,
instead you controlled the samples and you put them out yourself? What if instead you jumped on and made reels? And I promise you, I am not trying to be the person that's like, TikTok will make your business just blow up. That's not the intent. Right now, I'm not going for broad sweeping strokes. I'm just going for who are you? What do you sell? What are you about? Are you saying that anywhere other than your about me
yeah,
section? Do people know
yeah,
the sound of your voice? Do they know what you look like? Because if someone's going to book a planner, they're probably going to want to book a planner in their area whose face they've seen before, right? Just
yeah,
that little warm up, that little
yeah,
sample. That is a very tangible, very tactile way of just showing up. And I'm not saying goofy dance moves. I'm not saying we're doing this to get to 10,000 followers. We love social proof, right? Social media is social proof that you are doing something that people want to be around. Sure. But for your individual clients, who are you? Do they know that? Can they see that? Is that readily available? Social media is a great place to do that.
I love that. So, and do you ever think of, like, I always, I sit at this intersection of tech and the wedding industry,
Yeah.
right? And you see all of these, more advanced sort of marketing, scaled up marketing tactics, right? Most planners are not trying to court, 1,000 new clients
No.
in a year, right? Like, it's like, I just need a handful. And as a result, I think there are a lot of marketing tactics that don't necessarily, they're not as widely used,
Yeah.
but I've always thought there's like opportunity, and what
Mhm.
we're talking about conjures up the idea of a lead magnet, right? Which, as a
Yes.
SaaS company owner, of course, like, is that anything that you would ever say, like,
Yes.
pull together, like, tell me a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. So, a lead magnet or a lead generator is something that draws in leads and
Yep.
generates leads for you. So, I'm a huge fan of this. I think for those who are like, no matter what you say, Jamie, you are not going to see me on TikTok or Instagram shaking my tush for anything. I get it. I get it. So, what's another way that you can draw them in? Another way you can draw them in is with using those specifically. I would go for something very top of funnel.
Yeah.
Wedding checklist, timeline for planning, right? Like the actual structure of when you should be booking things. And then
Yeah.
you can choose to, I would highly recommend building out a little bit of an email sequence. We're not going Jenna Kutcher, right? We love Jenna. She's doing great things, but that's not what you need to do. We need practical application. So you send that to them and you say, hey, maybe I'll follow up with an email in a week to make sure everything makes sense. But feel free to go over this and let me know if you have any questions. And you can support them through that journey. Because if you're the only person sending them a checklist, all of a sudden, potato chip, right? So it changes the method of approach. So you're not shaking your tush to the latest dance craze or
Yeah.
trying to compete in a space that feels very saturated, but instead you are owning your audience much more effectively. So I'm a huge fan of email marketing if you can get there, or a lead generator if you can get there. And that sounds scary to some people. So sometimes the buy in for social media sounds easier, but sometimes the buy
Yeah.
in for a lead generator sounds easier. You just pick where you want to send out your samples.
And not to get overly detailed here,
Yeah.
Jamie, but let's say, somebody listening right now, I'm sure, is like, oh, I can totally put together like a checklist, or,
Yeah.
whatever, emergency, whatever. There are all these, things that, if you think about it, and that this sounds really silly, but I'm just going to say, if you're going to do the lead magnet, I won't tell you necessarily what to create, but really, hopefully, all of this stems from knowing your avatar too. Like, the way I say, like, you should know who your ideal client is. You mentioned that, right? We're trying to attract the ideal client. But like, um, as you create this lead magnet, you just want to really lean into like, what is something that my ideal client will really care about, that's going to really be attractive? And then, assuming they create that asset, how do they leverage it? Is it having an email opt-in field on the website, or
Yeah.
having a blog? Like, how do you is there like, tell me how to operationalize that.
Yeah, I think that there's probably a multi-pronged approach. I think having a very clear and present brand. So if people
Mm-hmm.
go to your website, your face should be on there. It should be a little
Mm-hmm.
bit more than just photos from weddings that you've done. Where's your personality? Where's the uniqueness? You put out language wise what you'd like to receive. So fun loving, laid back couples, you know, clearly lets them know that that's what you are looking for. And someone goes, oh, that's me. Wait, that's me. So kind of making sure your branding's in place. And then you can choose to do a pop-up for an opt-in. That's a very
Mm-hmm.
easy add-on for most websites. I think
Mm-hmm.
there's a science behind the timing of it where it should be within the first 10 seconds, but not before the first
Mm-hmm.
3 seconds that it should pop up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then it's just very real of like, what's the language? Ultimate wedding planning checklist. What does that look like? And this isn't permanent. So if you are doing this and you give it one shot, tinker with the words. Go back and
Yeah.
keep trying this.
Yeah.
You're not
Yeah.
married to it once you
I was
create
just
this pop
feeling
up,
that. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So much of this is, well, I made it and no one's using it, so it's not working. Is
Yeah.
it? Or did you just use the
Yeah.
wrong language? So clear
Yeah.
brand presence. Who are you? Who are you looking for? Again, it comes down to knowing your ideal client avatar and then making sure it pops up at a convenient time or convenient location.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's when they start scrolling that'll pop up. Sometimes you can
Mm-hmm.
set it up where it pops up every time they visit every page, which is annoying as heck.
Mm-hmm.
Or the first few times they visit your website, there's some
Right.
nuances to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does that answer your question a little bit more?
It totally
Okay.
does. And I want to give people I want to try to remove as many sort of impediments as I can to
Yeah.
actually doing this, right? Like, if people can just take this and actually, like, these ideas only work if you do them, right? So
Yeah.
if you could take this and just try it and see what the effect is, tweak it, see what the effect is. So no, I love that. So I'm watching the time fly, as it always does, for fun and impactful interviews.
Yeah.
And there's one more topic that I alluded to this in the intro. I really didn't even know if you would be willing to speak openly about this, because I know, again, you and I have known each other for a while. I know that you're quite successful in what you're doing, which is marketing and serving couples at a larger scale, not just the kind of individual by individual client booking. And I was actually just moved by your willingness to, I mean, it's so, I wasn't surprised, but like, it's so reflective of like the abundance mindset of,
Yes.
my fear was like, wait, Jamie, if we talk about this, are you just going to create competitors? And you're like, I'm not worried about that. So,
Yeah.
um, can you just kind of talk a little bit to set the stage here? Talk a little bit about the business that you've created, marketing to and serving couples on a larger scale.
Yeah. It was this whole experience. I fell into it on accident. Like everything from the very beginning. I just wanted a YouTube channel. I decided to talk about wedding planning. Oh, look, there's an audience for that. I didn't realize that. The whole social reciprocity thing. I'm giving away all of my best stuff. Why are you calling me? I don't understand. So what I also ran into was no one wanted to help me. No one
Yeah.
wanted to give me advice. Or it was very cagey and gatekeepy, and I was like, ew,
Yeah.
wait,
Yeah.
I'm not trying to. It seems like there's a lot of people that want help, right? Like, so it was such a bizarre thing to get into, and then really realizing that, a lot of groups will say community over competition, and they really do practice what they preach in that mentality. But I ran into people not even wanting me to assist for free. And I'm like, listen,
Yeah.
I will come work an event for free. I just want to do this. I just want to start my own business. But the second that came out of my mouth, it was, oh, well, nope, you're going to be my competition. So while the building of YouTube was happening, and then I'm having these, I'm growing my business more independently because I couldn't have anybody help. People started to come to me and then say, do you mentor anyone? Like, can I intern under you? And I'm like, what? Me? Absolutely. And I'd ask in all of our intake interviews, do you want to start your own business? It's fine if you do. I will just teach you differently. Not teach you less. I'll just teach you differently. Here's why I do it this way. Here's why our contracts look this way. I'll walk you through the sales process, not just show you how to run a wedding day. Because I think that there's a lot of like, who cares where we're going to put the fork if you don't have a financially viable business? Who cares where the fork goes, right? If you're going to be burnt out in 5 years, it doesn't matter. And I think I kind of lost the plot a little bit on the intent of your question. So hopefully
I'm just getting, could keep going. No, definitely. And I don't know why. I guess because like of what I said, my central sort of thesis at this point professionally is just that it's up here, right? The mindset. And I'm so struck by what you're saying and by the willingness and also by the anecdotes of when you bumped up against what, people commonly label the scarcity mindset, right? Now, I'm not saying you want to be foolish and just go put yourself out of business, but I don't think it's an accident that you've enjoyed the success you've had and that you have this genuine abundance mindset. And I have seen, I'm not going to obviously call anybody out here because all of this is human nature, right? Like I've had other software companies that emerge and I feel that flash of like, wait a minute, this is our corner stringer bell, like I can get into like the wire mode, I'm like, but then immediately it's like, wait a minute, let that go. Let that fear-based, and I've seen it, Jamie, in planners, and it's so understandable. I'm not belittling or throwing darts for anything here because we all have this aspect of human nature, but there's like, it's hard as a planner. And there's so many people at the start of the year, they're like, am I going to get the business I want? Is the profit going to be here? And that fear can just give rise to this scarcity mindset of like, this is me, this is mine, don't compete, and it's so cool and beautiful. And I think empowering being this opposite sort of mindset that you have. So tell me, Jamie, how does it feel, I guess, serving couples directly? I think you're tapping into an immense need. Okay. I just want to say, like, as a student for the past 10 years of business and of the wedding industry, there are so many couples out there that need guidance that aren't getting it. And you, in my mind, have just brought your buckets to the ocean. And there's plenty of ocean water left.
Yeah.
But like, tell me a little bit, does that resonate with you? Like, that's just from my vantage point how it seems.
Yeah, it's that's totally how it feels like, because I just it's the scale. So it's not like I don't understand where the wedding industry is coming from. You can't make a huge profit off of someone who only has a $10,000 wedding. It's not practical, right? It doesn't make any sense. That's why most, I mean, even the not wedding wire, they go for it. Where they get their money is from vendors, because they can't en masse figure out how to capitalize financially off of people who don't have very large weddings. It's you work 50 events a year at $50,000 weddings, and then you have enough to sustain yourself. So the scalability for most people is not practical. It's not spicy. It's not fun. It takes time. It takes patience. Obviously, you and I are huge Hormozy fans. So he talks about, like, if you have to do or be anything, be patient, because nobody wants to replicate it. So yeah, I mean, I walked out to the ocean and just kind of stood there for a second with a bucket, and then it filled up instantly. And I was like, wait, do I need to get another one of these? So there is this mentality of like, yeah, I can serve this audience, but I also want to be respectful of those who are like, I can't. I don't have that emotional capacity. I don't want to do that.
Right.
But you're right. There is, I think it's something like 70 to 80% of couples
don't have a planner.
They don't have a planner. They have no day of coordinator, no planning assistance.
That's right.
So that is the market that we were able to really capture in that specifically. It was wild. It was like, wait, how many more buckets do I need?
Yeah. I two quick asides. One, you mentioned Hormozy, and we mentioned it before.
I know.
Anybody listening, just go to YouTube, type in Alex Hormozi, Hormozi, and ZI, and you can send Jamie and me like the thank you email later.
Yep.
But just if you're, and that's what I always say, like if you're a wedding planner and you're running business, the tendency is to think that you're just a planner, but you're not. You're also a
No.
business owner, and the principles that he's talking about inspired you, inspired me, and are helpful. So the second thing that you pointed out here that I think is worth saying is it always looks super sexy and amazing
Yeah.
when you take the snapshot at the point where you are now. Like I know people are hearing this and like buckets, more buckets. Geez, like I'm scratching and clawing just to eke out my quota for this year. I love the sound of that, but we do want to be forthcoming and
Yeah.
say, and you can speak a little bit to this because it'll also reveal kind of the how to, but like this didn't happen overnight for you, right? Talk to me about the journey of building up the audience and building up the sales infrastructure and all of that stuff. Talk to me a little bit about that, please.
Yeah, it was more of a what can I control? Right? So I can't make people book me, but I can just control how authentically I show up online and in sales calls and on my website. That's what I can control. So I kept tweaking it until it felt like something hit right. So as far as building the online, that's one of the parts of your question, right? Pregnancy brain is real, y'all. Okay,
Yep.
cool.
Yeah. You're doing amazing. If this is pregnancy brain, I need it. Like
Oh,
this is
goodness
like
gracious.
be careful what you ask for, right? but like
I turned my frequently asked questions into video content. What's something I run into with clients all the time? And this is a great methodology for those who are trying to figure out, like, even after we talked about offering potato chips, you're like, I still don't know what to do. What's something you get asked all the time? Heck, go to one of my videos, take notes, and then put your own spin on it. I mean, obviously don't copy word for word because that's, a little plagiarism, but like you will continuously run into these same things. So that's what I did. I looked at my audience and I went, what are the issues that my ideal avatar, the budget couple, is running into? What are the problems?
Mm-hmm.
What are the things that need to be educated on? What are the biggest stress points? And to this day, I kid you not, Eddie, I am consistently in fear of running out of content. I have been doing YouTube for 5 years now. And I'm like, I'm going to run out.
Yeah.
I'm going to run out. I'm going to run out. My career is going to be over. But it keeps coming back. There's still more to talk about. So that's kind of how we really based things off of in the very beginning, and still do. That's one of the main tenets of what we do. Turn frequently asked questions into what we put out there. And then in using the language and how strategically we pitch that and offer that is how we then draw in those dream clients. So it's in the tweaking. It's not once it's up, it's done. I did it. I did my job. It's continuously going back and tweaking how the questions are asked. That's kind of how that all built up.
And then it's a matter of having a way to monetize that, a scalable way to monetize that, be it a course or some other service offering. But obviously the idea here, especially given the avatar that we're talking about, is not that you're putting, the standard like 100 hours into each client, but rather that you have a way to scalably help people. And you've done that brilliantly with your course, right?
Yeah, and I think that's also something that like real people, real planners can do in real time with real people. It doesn't have to be on this scale, but if you sit down for one weekend and you put together your ultimate wedding planning checklist, if you look at those frequently asked questions and you put together those lead generators, that's a one-time deal that will pay off in dividends, that will make you stand out in a crowd. So even if you're like, that's cute, I'm never going to go make YouTube videos for 5 years and hope for the best and make money off of them. I'm not doing a course. No, but you could be really strategic about what you do now that can continue to pay off.
And you said this up front, it's worth reiterating. This isn't necessarily for everybody, right? Like I think we all have, some people love writing, so blogging may be your thing. Some people are like great networkers, so conferences, like, you don't necessarily have to you can't actually do all of it. But for those people that are listening, that this does appeal to, like you have such an, at least it feels this way, just such a naturally suitable personality and charisma for being on video. But there are probably other people listening that kind of have that sort of inclination as well. But yeah, what I love about it, Jamie, and is just this notion of serving others. Like I feel like one of my deepest realizations as an entrepreneur was that the secret is to help as many people as possible as much as possible. And I started off 10 years ago not really knowing anything about wedding planning. I didn't plan our wedding. But as I've gotten to know so many wedding planners and to see the deep value that they offer, I'm like, there are more people that need your expertise. They don't know how badly they need it, but they do. So if this helps more people, like it's not just about helping the people that are running businesses thrive and enjoy maybe some of the success that you're. It's also about the couples
Yeah.
whose weddings could be transformed. I'm sure I mean, does that gratify you? Do you get that sort of feeling from what you're doing?
Absolutely. I will never take for granted the comments, the follow-up emails that are like, I could not have done this without your videos.
Yeah.
It's so humbling. And to know that I am with this mastermind growing up planners who, I mean, if they're going to do it, it's going to be all their own stuff, right? Like as
Right.
Alex said
Sure.
in one of his podcasts, because we are clearly an Alex fan club,
Yeah. We're
like
in the cult.
you should be better than your mentor. I
Yeah.
ardently
Yeah. It's so
want to
powerful.
train up planners that are better than me. So if I can
So
get them set
powerful.
up on this idea of like not a scarcity mindset, an abundance mindset,
Yeah.
what can we own?
Yeah.
What boundaries can we have? How many more clients are going to be served better? Because
Yeah.
someone goes, this is my yes, this is my no. Here's what I can do for you. And really clear delivery. And then also put their money where their mouth is and be extremely effective when they get the job done. They know where the fork goes, right? But you
Yeah.
have to do the work to get there. It's so much more than just planning weddings, it's running a business. So this whole thing is the whole sphere of what we're trying to do is to really make a wedding day as seamless as possible, as
Yeah.
relaxing as possible, as stress-free as possible, because it's beautiful. Like
Yeah.
you found your favorite person in the whole world, like your favorite human of all the
Yeah.
humans, and
Yeah.
you want to celebrate that. So what does that look like? And
Yeah.
that's the baseline of everything that we do. So I agree. I think to be able to offer that through videos, through online course content, which is just like the cringiest thing to say out loud. I hate calling it a course because it's so much more than that. But, and
Yeah.
then to raise up planners to also do those same things in the best capacity that they can, ideally even better than me. How much could we change the way that wedding planning is perceived? Because I think a lot of planners
Absolutely.
listening right now would probably be like, yeah, wedding planning is not hard. It's not.
Yeah.
It's a series of booking vendors in a strategic order. It's the emotions, the finances, and the expectations that get in the way for my clients, for those around them, the expectations they have for me. It's all of the other stuff that make it difficult. So if we did
Yeah.
that with a real heart and a real purpose of trying to make this a successful and joyful experience for them, I think it could change the
Yeah.
way that the industry treats the budget couple for sure.
I love that. And you said a word that always comes to my mind as I mean, because you can kind of peel the onion layers like, why do we do this, right? And the word joy, even for Timeline
Mm,
Genius, like, because we're serving the planners who are creating this experience. Why? It's so we can have this event, but it's also like, and the celebration, and it's why. It's like, because we're giving joy to people, right? We're
yeah.
letting them share love, and like there's nothing better, like that's just amazing. You mentioned, Jamie, your mastermind.
Yeah.
You not only are helping serving um, couples, but also are reaching back and helping planners. My mind was blown when you was like, yeah, I had one person that even wanted to start a YouTube channel. I was like, I'll help you do that
Yeah.
too. Like tell me a little bit more about your mastermind so that anybody listening who might be interested can learn more about it.
Sure. So the heart and the purpose behind it was to pull back the curtain on everything that we do. So it's a multi-module online course. I'm also live once a month answering questions in real time, like actually me, not a webinar, like me showing up answering real questions. To basically, how do we get you started off in such a way that is as foolproof as possible? I will tell you the mistakes that I made very clearly. You can, and I've even had people go through the mastermind and be like, I still made those same mistakes, but at least I went, oh, that's what Jamie's talking about, right? But to go through that experience of like, I will tell you how I baked the recipe, I will give you the recipe and I'll tell you where I screwed up. And then I will be here to support you as you are currently baking the recipe. If that's, I don't know maybe I need to go feed myself because there's a lot of food references to
Pickles, yeah.
pickles, baking,
Potato chips.
yeah, but that's the intent behind it is I'll tell you everything, apply what you want, and I'm here to answer your questions along the way.
Who is the planner that is just tailor-made to go through your mastermind and to come out on the other end transformed, doing backflips and with a business that's on a completely different level? Like, who is this tailor-made for?
It's definitely not for those who expect things to be done for them, right? You have homework. You have, again, that the victimhood and success cannot go hand in hand on this one. I can't.
They do not go, yeah.
I can't book your clients for you. I will absolutely share your contact information once you've gone through a certain amount of the course. We share it with our email list. It's like 50,000 people on this list. It's your job to then sell effectively, right? But I will tell you all the ways that I did it and provide feedback on any questions that you have. So it's more like I feel more like a coach in this capacity. You still have to play the game, right?
Yeah, there's no getting rid of that. I mean, there's
No.
just no way. I mean, I guess you could, but that's a whole different full-time job for each person, if you're going to come in and do everything. But who, like, what stage of the career, or does it matter? Like, is this for,
that angle.
sounds like more for, well, both, but all everything you just said too, that's really valuable as well. But like,
Well, we start with business basics, logo, and we don't spend an obscene amount of time on that, but I think brand, I annoy the tar out of out of everyone in our company because I'm like, what about the branding? What about the branding? What about, are you using the correct font on that? Because I want people to instantly recognize who you are and have that be a lasting experience for them. We focus on, business mechanics of sole proprietor versus LLC, those kinds of things.
Gotcha.
So we tend to hit early on those things, and it's drip released. So you get one module a month as you go. But there's also the deeper stuff of boundaries, of contracts, of rewriting your contracts. So what's the difference? So it is more geared towards that beginning stage for sure. So if you are like 5 years into this and you're like, why are we talking about branding? I'm not rebranding. That module will not serve you, probably.
Right.
The community.
Yeah, and it's like most things. It's not that you can't get value out of this, but certain parts of
Yeah. So I tend.
What were you gonna say there?
I would think that the ideal avatar is within the first 3 years of their business. There's still a lot of power to be taken away from the branding session. There's still a lot of power to be taken away from those, which is such a weird thing to say because like I'm the one who's talking about it. So it feels very self-aggrandizing of like, it's so powerful. I'm just so good at what I do. But we've received
you have to spread the word,
feedback,
Jamie.
right?
Otherwise, people won't know. That's it. Yeah.
We've received affirming feedback from people who've been at different phases. Ideally, it's within the first 3 years of your business. Some of the stuff you might be like, oh, I didn't think about that, or oh, that's good. But a lot of the power we see is still in the live phone calls and in the community as well. Like that was the unexpected part of building this mastermind, was watching all of these people just surround each other and help each other. Our first cohort, I'm going to like digress for a sec. There were planners that were literally crossing state lines to be assistants for each other at their first weddings. Wow. I openly wept. I wasn't even pregnant at that point. I just was like crying, just being like, what? This is so cool. Like I didn't, that's not what we planned. So long story short, first couple years of your business, there's a lot of power to it. And we are just humbled to be facilitators of it. Yeah.
I'm going to reference our guy, Alex Hormozy. I guess we're just on this wavelength. I just watched an interview with him talking with another really cool guy, Lewis Howes, runs a big podcast. And they both agreed on this point. And it actually it was really impactful. I mean, it's nothing that I haven't heard, but it's slightly differently articulated.
Yeah.
They both basically were like, there's a lot of, they were talking about building wealth and financial security, et cetera. And they're like, a lot of people subscribe to the ethos of like, you take X percentage of your income, you're putting that in like, the stock market or whatever assets. And they both were like, I didn't invest in the S&P, I invested in the S and me. And I'm saying this because, they said, look, a lot of times people do give free things away. A lot of times you can soak up some knowledge in a free YouTube video or in a book. But then again, a lot of times, like, you need to actually pay to get that valuable training and information. But what Alex said that really just hit home for me, he just has a way of kind of like distilling some of these principles, these
Really
core
does.
axioms. He's like, if I had taken that same amount of money, and in the same interview, he's like, I plan to be a billionaire in the next like 5 to 7 years or whatever. But he's like, if I had taken that same amount of money that I invested in myself in courses, et cetera, and put it in the market, it would have grown by, give or take an average of like 10%, whatever. He's like, I would have had one amount of money. He's like, what I did, I scratched, I clawed, all of my savings went into trainings, masterminds,
Yes.
conferences, coaching, and the ROI that I got from those investments is why I'm here, right? That's not a 10%. Some of those investments can pay off 100-fold, literally. So I say all of that to say, if folks are interested in your mastermind, you obviously are doing amazing things, and I would encourage them to check it out. How can they see, learn more? Like if they want to check it out online, where can they go, Jamie?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if you want to hear a little bit more about industry conversations, business advice, we have a whole wedding industry focused podcast as well that we would absolutely love to have y'all check out. Because obviously, if you're here, podcasts are already your jam. That's theunionpodcast.com. And if you want to check out the mastermind, it's theunionmastermind.com. So, well, I don't know if there's a the on there, actually. It might just be unionmastermind.com on that one. But can walk you through, you can see video reviews from people that went through it. I actually just had interviewed 2 of the gals that went through who came back to me and said, can we be interviewed, please? Like, we would like to come onto the podcast to talk about our experience.
That's the best.
Just wild. It was wild. So definitely check those out. The nurture sequence of kind of helping you figure out what we're about would probably be the podcast if you want to start there. But we do, and there, as much as I try to not feed into the scarcity mindset, I'm only one person. And because I am doing live calls and about to have baby number 4, we are very particular about how many people we let in at a time, because otherwise I just won't be emotionally available. So there's definitely a wait list for now, but get on there. We provide as many resources as we can until we can get you in the door.
I love that, Jamie. So those that listen to the podcast know there's one more question coming. I would do this all day, but time won't permit. And the question is, based on all, your vast array of experience, everything you've learned over the years, if you could give one piece of advice, particularly to our wedding planners, that would help them as much as possible in building their business and chasing their professional dreams, what would that one piece of advice be?
Oh man, just one?
You can give 2. I'll give you 2. Is 2 enough? Can we compromise on 2?
No.
You're like, I need 10.
I feel like I'm gonna be a cheeseball because it's from the mastermind, but like, hey, we practice what we preach around here. Stick to your why. And I know you mentioned that earlier, and I wanted to dive into that further because it's just one of my favorite things to talk about. What is your why? What gets you up in the morning? Why are you doing this? Why do you want to serve these couples? Why do you want to run this business? And if and when you run into issues, business issues, decision making, should you expand, you run it through the filter of, does it fit and does it feed your why? And it's a really clarifying experience that I'm even currently going through as we're trying to figure out what business looks like with a new baby in the mix and stuff, of like, does it feed our why?
Wow, that's uncanny because it's also very timely for me to hear. And, it's like, I think it was John Wooden, the famous, legendary, like, now deceased UCLA basketball coach, and just like the fundamentals. Like, he was like, I teach the fundamentals. And, it's Jim Rohn too. I listen, he's really cool. He's like, if somebody's telling you they've got some new fundamental, he's like, you should be like a little dubious because like these things are timeless. Like they're built into the very fabric of like human nature, and staying anchored to your why. That's not some, I'm sure people have heard that before, but damn, that's powerful. And we can never hear it too often, when you're having that adversity. I almost think about it like this magnet. If you can tap into it, it'll pull you through the challenging experience. Let me ask you just, follow up here. Why is that your number one piece of advice?
Because that's where gray area gets the most gray. Right? The comparison game, well, they're doing that, maybe I should do that. Or, well, I'm not doing YouTube videos, so I must not be a good wedding planner, or I'm not on Instagram. It's when, okay, but does it feed your why? Like, where is this insecurity coming from? Or building on extra stuff to your business. Okay, does it feed your why? It's such a good governor. It's such a good governor. It's a humbling experience. It's an empowering experience. It's, maybe that does feed my why. Maybe that is a valid business choice. Or, no, I think I'm just doing this because all of those kids on TikTok make it look really cool. And I feel like I should also do that. But then you're just like, especially when you're an entrepreneur, you're just scattered and you're all over the place. And you think if you keep on adding more offerings, you'll just get better at what you do, right? Instead of honing in, hyper-focusing. So keeping it simple is not spicy. It's not to go back through and refine. Our word for this year for our business is refine. And someone recently was like, that's scary because that implies fire. And I was like, yeah, yeah. I didn't think about that when we picked it. But if you can stay in that process of sticking with your why and coming back to it, you will see a more long-term success than just doing the latest TikTok craze.
Jamie, that is a beautiful place to leave it, and just reminds me why I do this, right? You have a podcast. It takes time, but I hope that people get the benefit from this that even I've gotten, and hopefully even more, that they can apply it to their business. So on behalf of the Timeline Genius community and all of our podcast listeners, thank you for doing what you do and for taking time to share your wisdom and for having that abundance mindset and helping so many people. We really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for giving me an opportunity to talk about it. I get jazzed. I get super jazzed.